Most people don't lose their future because they're lazy. They lose it because they're distracted. Every day, their attention is pulled in 100 different directions until they no longer remember what they were originally trying to build. Their energy gets spent. Their hours disappear. And at the end of the day, they feel exhausted in the specific way that produces nothing. The exhaustion of people who were busy reacting to everything except what actually mattered. The most dangerous part is that distraction rarely feels dangerous while it's happening. It feels like living. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most people never fully confront. You do not need to be stopped to be prevented from moving forward. You just need to be kept sufficiently occupied with things that don't matter. Not blocked, occupied. Not opposed, distracted. Because a distracted person and a person who has given up produce nearly identical results, except the distracted person never realizes what's happening. They are busy. They feel engaged. They have the sensation of motion without the reality of direction. Think about what your attention actually is. It is not a passive thing, a background awareness that simply registers whatever is present. It is the active resource that determines what gets built in your life. Whatever you give your sustained attention to is what grows. Whatever you consistently ignore is what withers. Your attention is, in the most literal sense, the tool with which your future is constructed. And once you understand that, the question of what captures your attention every day becomes one of the most important questions you can ask. Most people never ask it. They move through their days responding to whatever is loudest. And the loudest things are almost never the most important ones. Pay attention to this, because it is one of the central dynamics of modern life that almost nobody discusses directly. The world is structured to reward urgency over importance. The notification that arrives now feels more pressing than the work that matters in a year. The drama unfolding in your social feed feels more immediate than the goal that requires patient, uninterrupted effort. The emotional reaction being triggered in you right now feels more real than the direction you were moving in before something pulled you sideways. Important things are usually quiet. They don't arrive with alerts. They don't escalate until you engage with them. They simply sit there, available, patient, accumulating the cost of neglect slowly enough that the cost is invisible until it is enormous. Distractions, by contrast, are almost always loud. They are designed to interrupt. They are built around the specific architecture of what makes human attention move involuntarily. Novelty, conflict, emotion, social comparison. The perpetual suggestion that something important is happening somewhere that requires your awareness right now. And this is where the trap begins, because you did not decide to be distracted. The decision was made for you, through the design of the environment you move through every day. Your phone is not a passive object. It is a system built by teams of people whose professional purpose is to capture and hold your attention as completely and for as long as possible. Every notification, every infinite scroll, every autoplay, every algorithmic next suggestion is an engineered intervention in your attentional life. They don't need to control your actions. They only need to control where you look, because where you consistently look determines what you do, and what you consistently do determines what you become. Think about it in the most concrete terms available. You pick up your phone to check one thing. 5 minutes later, you are somewhere you did not intend to be, watching a conflict between strangers, consuming an opinion about something that will not affect your life, following a thread of content that arrives in an endless sequence, because the sequence is designed to have no natural end. An hour passes. The thing you were going to do is still undone. And this happens not once but multiple times per day, in a pattern so consistent that it has become invisible to you, the background condition of your attention that you no longer notice because you have never experienced a sustained alternative. Here's what most people don't realize. Emotional reactions are one of the fastest forms of distraction available. When you are angry, that anger is all there is. When you are outraged, the outrage fills the entire available space of your attention. When you are caught in the emotional charge of something you encountered online, a political statement, a stranger's behavior, an opinion that strikes you as wrong, your focus leaves everything you were doing and relocates entirely into the feeling and its management. This is where people lose years of their lives, not in dramatic failures, but in the accumulated cost of thousands of emotional reactions to things that had no genuine relevance to their actual life. The argument in the comments section of a video, the outrage about the behavior of someone you will never meet, the hour spent processing how a stranger's post made you feel. None of this is illegitimate as human experience, but it is expensive. Every minute your attention is inside someone else's drama is a minute it is not inside your own work, your own growth, your own quietly accumulating future. Most people never notice that anger and outrage are particularly effective as distractions precisely because they feel important. When you are angry, you are not experiencing yourself as distracted. You are experiencing yourself as engaged with something that matters. The feeling is indistinguishable from genuine urgency, which is why it is so consistently deployed in content, in conversation, in the design of platforms that have discovered that outrage produces more sustained engagement than almost any other emotional state. They are not making you angry because they want you to feel bad. They are making you angry because anger keeps you there, and keeping you there is the entire objective. The uncomfortable truth is that a distracted mind is genuinely easier to influence than a focused one, not because distracted people are less intelligent, but because a fragmented attention cannot evaluate information as carefully as a sustained one. When you are moving from one stimulus to the next, each thing you encounter gets the attention of a mind that has already been depleted by everything that came before it. Your judgment is compromised. Your patience is gone. Your capacity for the slow, effortful thinking that produces good decisions has been consumed by the rapid, reactive thinking that the preceding hours demanded. And in that state, you are far more likely to accept what is presented to you, agree with what is argued, and buy what is sold. A focused mind, by contrast, is very difficult to move. It has the internal resources to evaluate rather than simply receive. It can sit with complexity long enough to understand it rather than reaching for the nearest available interpretation. It does not need to resolve uncertainty immediately because it is not running on the depleted, urgency-driven energy of a mind that has been reacting all day. This is why attention is not just a productivity resource. It is a protection. The person whose attention is intact is genuinely harder to mislead, harder to manipulate, harder to redirect toward ends that are not their own. And then there is comparison. Think about how much of your attention across a single day, across a week, across a year, has been spent measuring your life against someone else's. Someone whose income you became aware of. Someone whose relationship looked a certain way from outside. Someone whose success in a domain you care about arrived publicly, visibly, in a form that your brain immediately processed in relation to your own position. There is a phrase that has been said many times in many forms, and it is worth saying again here because it has not been fully understood by most of the people who have heard it. Comparison is the thief of joy, but the theft goes further than joy. Comparison is also the thief of direction. Because the moment you make someone else's life the reference point for your own progress, you have transferred the authority over your standards, your timeline, and your definition of success to a person who has nothing to do with what you are actually trying to build. Think about what comparison actually produces in practice. You see someone your age who earns more and something shifts in how you feel about where you are. Not because your situation changed, it didn't, but because a new reference point arrived, and suddenly the progress you were making feels smaller than it felt before you made the comparison. You see a relationship that looks a certain way from the outside, and something in you measures your own relationship against it. often unfavorably, often based on a version of the other relationship that exists only in its public presentation. You see someone's success in a field you are working in, and instead of being moved to work, you are moved to compare, to assess where you are relative to where they are, to feel the specific pain of a gap you cannot close through comparison, but only through the work that comparison is currently preventing. This is where people lose enormous amounts of time, not to rest, which is necessary, not to connection, which matters, but to the specific paralysis of measuring themselves against lives they cannot fully see, by standards they did not choose, on timelines that have nothing to do with the actual requirements of what they are trying to build. Comparison doesn't just steal joy. It steals the focused energy that your actual work requires. And every hour spent in the paralysis of comparison is an hour your goal went unworked toward. What most people don't realize is that distraction is not always loud. Some of its most effective forms are completely quiet. Endless planning is a form of distraction, the comfortable, productive feeling activity of preparing for the work rather than doing it. Endless consuming is a form of distraction. The books, the podcasts, the courses, the content about the thing you are trying to learn, consumed as a way of feeling engaged with it without doing the harder work of actually attempting it. Busyness is a form of distraction. The full calendar, the constant activity, the days that end in exhaustion and begin again in the same motion, never quite making contact with the thing that was actually supposed to happen. Most people confuse movement with progress. They feel at the end of the day like they have been engaged, and they have. But engagement and progress are not the same thing. Progress requires the sustained application of attention to a specific thing that matters. And sustained, specific, uninterrupted attention is exactly what the structure of modern life is least designed to support. Think about the last time you had 2 consecutive hours of completely undivided focus on something that genuinely mattered to you. Not multitasking focused, not with notifications arriving in the background focused, not switching between the work and checking in on something else every few minutes, fully, continuously present in one thing. For most people, that experience is genuinely rare, and its rarity is not an accident. It is the product of an environment that fragments attention by design and a set of habits that have adapted so completely to that fragmentation that sustained focus now feels uncomfortable. Silence feels uncomfortable. The absence of stimulation feels like something is wrong. Most people fear silence because silence demands something that distraction relieves them of. The necessity of sitting with themselves and what they actually think, want, and have not yet done. Distraction is, in this sense, partly chosen, not consciously, not deliberately, but as a way of managing the discomfort of confronting the gap between where you are and where you intended to be. The phone picked up is sometimes an answer to ambition that feels too large. The scroll that follows is sometimes relief from a silence that asks questions you are not ready to answer. The people who accomplish extraordinary things in their lifetimes are not, in most cases, the most talented people available. They are the people who learned through discipline, or through the specific pain of watching their potential disappear into distraction, how to protect their attention, how to refuse the emotional reactions that are designed to capture it, how to sit in the silence that most people flee, how to keep the important thing visible on the days when everything urgent is screaming for their focus. Because once you control your attention, you begin to control your time. And once you control your time, what you do with it, what you refuse to spend it on, what you protect it for, you begin to control the direction of your life. Not all of it, never all of it, but enough. The question is not whether you have enough hours. You have the same hours as everyone else. The question is where those hours are going and whether you chose that or whether something else did.